Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunuktu Saha Viryam Karavavai Tejasvinavaditam Astu Ma Viddishavai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us. May that one give strength and vigor to our studies. May our minds be illumined. May we not unnecessarily cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So this is a Vedanta series, question and answer. So I will wait for you to, anybody who has a question, you unmute yourself and we shall try to answer any questions.
The question is that how can we distinguish that it's not my thought, but I am being guided in this thought? And the concern was that if I look at a rainbow, and it was not a concern like associated thoughts, where if I look at a rainbow, and as long as it is there, it is so real that I cannot deny it. Same with the what do you call in desert, what you see in, which is not water? You understand, I forgot the word. And so unless we come out of the situation, we can never realize that is unreal. And also in gospel, when Thakur mentions that everything is like as if I'm seeing everything made out of wax, like equivalent to that. And it seems like because the observer is outside of what he's observing. So the question is, how can we practice to observe and still be the object of observation?
See, the first step really in spiritual life is to find out what is real. What is real means what is permanently true. That is something that doesn't suffer from two things. One is sudden appearance and disappearance, and the other thing is change. Appearance and disappearance is framed within space, and change is framed within time. So the theory behind the whole question of Maya or illusion or apparition is space and time. We can experiment with it. Supposing I say, let us all now sit up nicely. And what we'll do is we'll now remove time. That means we'll remove all change. So supposing I have some kind of magic wand like that, and I wave it over everybody and say, okay, let me prepare you like a photographer taking a picture. So a photographer taking a picture, whether you smile, whether you don't smile, your picture is there for relative eternity and you can't change it. You can't go back and say, oh, bring the photographer back. Of course, these days, you can do all kinds of airbrushing and what have you. Don't complain. Whenever we take a picture of the Swami, he never smiles. Oh, just airbrush a smile there. And the smile may not be compatible with the face that you took. So supposing I count to 3 and say, in 3, all change goes, all movement goes. So I'll give you the opportunity, just brush your hair a little bit, prepare a smile so that it's caught for eternity. And then 1, 2, 3, stop. Okay, everything stops. No movement. You'll be there like a statue, not moving, not looking left or right, not seeing anything, just all time is gone. So that means all change is gone. Can you imagine something like that? We can't imagine something like that because even when something is static, the eyes have to move. And so there's movement of every kind. Watching a scenery, say a sunrise or sunset, the sun can be seen changing, going up, going down. And even in a seemingly fixed scene, the eyes also can go up and down and move. It's not confined to a waking state. We also see change in a dream also. Dreamless sleep, no changes there. Time is taken away. Space also is taken away. Now, I say now, let us now remove space. That means every object in front disappears, because for an object to be there and registered, there have to be boundaries, confines, there has to be dimensions. 3 dimensions normally there, X, Y, and Z. You can plot them on a graph. So you have one axis, another cross axis, and then an axis going down, 3 dimensions, X, Y, and Z. Breadth, height, depth. You take that all away, the whole world disappears. So what we observe as our reality, as our normal working, waking, operational world, has to have within it these dimensions of space and time. And then to operate within it, there has to be one further thing, kriya, function. Now, the interesting thing is that from 1905 onwards, Einstein used this dimension, this geometric dimension, and said, wait, another dimension has to be added. 4 dimensions have to be there. Today, there's a theory, more a hypothesis, actually, which is called string or superstring theory, that for it to work mathematically will require many, many more dimensions. Some of them models will require 14 dimensions, some will require 11 dimensions, so it goes on. So we are living within a world of dimensions, but they're not all the dimensions we have. These are only the dimensions that the eyes catch. These are the only dimensions which the senses catch and process. And our processing comes from memory. We relate it to what we have experienced. So the idealists will say, we don't know if this exists or not. Let's postulate that the external world is something like an X, an unknown thing. You see, if you happen to be in a relationship and the relationship ends and you're a mathematician, you could say, about my X, Y. So you have these dimensions that are fully restrictive. And when you take these dimensions away or add to these dimensions, our whole shape changes. So the idealist says, outside, so-called, outside of the senses, we have an unknown, let's call it X. The Y component then, in this example, the idealist example will be some processing entity, some mind that then projects something onto the X and makes this world of ours. Now, this idealist position was taken up by what is called Transcendental Idealism. Immanuel Kant was very famous for it, but we find it mentioned in Swami Vivekananda's talks. He gives us this whole idea. In fact, this whole XY business is all coming from Swami Vivekananda. So if we want to understand the reality of what is here, we have to make a careful analysis. And all the Upanishads do it. The Bhagavad-Gita does it also. All the scripture will have to make this one assertion that we have to discriminate. And further to that, on the base of the discrimination, we have to renounce. Renounce means we don't put as much value on this as we used to. It now becomes something shifting, something like a dream. And where do all these impressions come from? They will come from an unconscious mind. So thought acts as a kind of suction. When you ask the question, a thought comes to me, or you, in conventional language, you say, I think. A misunderstanding, because there is an organism there. A very, very important part of the organism will be, and this internal instrument is what is described as antakarana. Most important aspect of this will be our attention. Our attention can be directed here and there. The senses catch something. The mind then makes an interpretation from the memory. It is projected, and then a reaction takes place. This is called the process called life.
Just before I get confused again. So essentially, removing space is everything to do with the mind. Are you saying that?
Yes, because when all the eyes are closed and when dream folds up and tucks itself away, where is space? And the whole thing is called mind. In a causal way, then we can find a subtle way and then a gross way. And why we say it's mind is because mind is the origin of the whole thing. The whole thing comes from mind. But this requires an analysis, and there's some helpful philosophy that is useful to us. All of the schools of thought within the Vedanta system, be it of a devotional kind, dualistic, be it of a connected kind called qualified non-dualism, be it of an absolute kind, all of them rely on one thing in relation to the universe in front of us, our observed world. The Sankhya's are the experts. And so Sankhya's lay out some tattvas, some basic elements for us. 24, we can go up to 26 also. It is fundamental to understanding to see this. Where does all this world come from? It comes from an entity playing the role of creator. And that we call cosmic mind. From God's mind, all of this comes. So where does thought come? Thought comes from God's mind. What is our misunderstanding? I have a personal mind. The same misunderstanding can be there if you assume that any RTE broadcast in Ireland or BBC broadcast from the UK is coming and being delivered to your door. Some postal service is there knocking on your door. Here, please listen to this broadcast. But in this age of technology, we can broaden the example because this broadcast that you're making here now, that we're doing here now, is dependent on radio waves. And when your telephone rings, radio waves again. The whole thing is radio waves. And these radio waves, where do they reside? They reside in a field, a wonderful field of operation that has no seeming boundaries. And within it has different waves of different frequencies. This the ancient called Agasha, some operational field that penetrates everywhere, is seen and understood to be everywhere. Something like a kind of BBC broadcast grace is flowing. So the broadcast from the radio station is going out, and so many virtual aerials are there hidden because the technology is so astute today. And what's necessary for a person is to tune to that wavelength. Right now we broadcast here from the internet, it's all to do with radio waves. And we have a new hall at the back, and we can't easily catch the internet there. So generosity of UK devotees gave us a number of serial boosters. So when the limit is found, another booster picks that edge of that and broadcasts another field. So in this way, God's grace as thought is always flowing. How to decide where the ego gets involved, or how to decide that it is God's grace and the first thought would be a divine thought. A kind of rule of thumb might be this. When you recognize a broadcast because the wavelength has been tuned into, is it your broadcast in the first place? Is it your right tuning? Is it your wrong tuning? Or how are you channeling these waves, which we call thought? So thought has within it a capacity for a suction. And it naturally pulls everything toward the thinker. So naturally, it is very important that you are selective about what you think about any subject.
And who guides that?
Who guides that? There is an owner within the mind that we call a kind of administrative manager that we call I. this component of the mind called aham, just simply aham, I. So that when the attention goes outwards, we can see a coordinating response internally called I. That shifting entity is there, an assumption that behind everything, this observer that you're talking about, associated with the instrument, is what we call I. And it is given a freedom, just as you are given a freedom to tune into any broadcast you choose. God's grace flowing eternally, arriving at your substation, your radio station, your transmitting station, or at least your catching station. And now they catch that. And normally, it is dictated by the condition of the unconscious mind, whatever values might be in there. But the capacity to notice it is also there. And we can, when we notice it, we can see, is this the value I want? Is this the kind of thought I want to entertain? And whatever thought I want to entertain, I can now steer it nicely in a skilled way, in a sporting way. If I leave it to its own devices, then the unconscious mind will have its pulling power. And unthinkingly, I'll be creating my own world around me that you're calling the rainbow, the illusion, or the desert mirage, and so on. All of that is there. When matter comes appearing as bodies, and it's thought of as good for all, that thought comes, then the law of suction comes and causes an inflow of everything that is required to nourish every entity. So also when you think, for example, of energy itself, prana, see, we can think of prana as a different thing. Let us understand from physics that two things are there, seemingly separate, yet simultaneously connected, and also with the capacity for transforming one to the other.
Just before you get into that, can I just clarify that step before that? You said that from the cosmic mind, so waves coming off different frequency, I have the freedom to choose to tune into a particular frequency, and that freedom is being guided by the condition of my unconscious mind.
Unless you take control of it. You see, if you don't take control of it, no guiding is taking place at all. Supposing I saturate the mind with love of God, then any thought that arises will naturally go in this direction. It is the unconscious mind that is really penetrating through. And originally it wasn't like that. Originally, I had to take every thought and every experience, and I had to condition it in a certain way. So primitive man and animals and so on and so forth will not guide anything. They'll simply take on whatever energy is there and use it in a reactive way. I have to eat. I have to have shelter. I have to survive. Survival is the primary urge for all organisms. Now we also retain that, of course, in the unconscious mind. We call this biological instinct. So that's okay, we leave it there. But the higher mind will say, let me now take all the food, and instead of eating it with an aim to survive, or eating it with an aim to relish, because that survival instinct has been upgraded to be sophisticated, and I relish it, and make a speciality of it. Gourmet food. Instead of basically eating in order to convert the matter that I call food into the energy that I call life, I decide, let me do it in a highly sophisticated way and go to a restaurant and select food I like. Let me take all the ingredients, mix them together, put it in an oven, and make a muffin come out. And then delight in eating that. Very good, wonderful. There is a converting mechanism within that also, to say that not only is food for nourishment, but food is really delivered to me from a divine source, such as in the same way that everything is delivered to me as a divine source. Because the energy is not my own, the food is not my own, the converting mechanism is not my own. When I look at it properly, I'll see it is all due to another force. This force we call God in religion. God is doing it all. He's doing it all for me, digesting my food. My example, when I eat my food, I don't put my hand down with a spoon and give it a stir. I don't digest my food. My food is digested for me. And if we take scripture seriously, we see that the Lord declares himself as Vaishvanara, the internal fire, the digestive fire that makes this conversion. For what? For the fact that he has a purpose for me. If it wasn't like that, he wouldn't digest my food. So we have to take all this into consideration. Any thought current is continuously arriving at our reception area. And if we leave it unguarded, then it'll just create a suction. Yeah, all thought is a suction anyway, but it'll suck in toward ourselves difficult areas of experience. The original complaint of man is, why is my life so unhappy? Why are all these bad negative experiences happening to me? Sankhya answer is, thought is a suction and you attracted it toward yourself. You have no business to complain about it. Change your thought. Change your thought so systematically, so scientifically, that every second, that is every framework of time, is used to consciously direct your thought in an area which has higher values. And the more you do that, the more you displace all the negative ones already contained in the unconscious area, and you start saturating the unconscious mind with higher values of strength and beauty and goodness and love and harmony and all of that. And then all these beautiful corresponding scenes will come toward you. Teacher comes toward you. The right environment comes to you. The right scripture comes to you. The right association of people come to you. They're like, if you want to plant a flower garden, then all these areas will come to you. Rainfall comes to you. The air comes to you. The nutrients from the soil come to you. All of it comes to you. And we are allowed to think, I planted a garden. But you see, there's Ramakrishna's story about the Brahmin who killed a cow. You know that story, isn't it? And then when people criticized him, he said, no, actually, I didn't do it. The hand did it. And since the hand is directed by the Lord Indra himself did it. In other words, that energy that directs willing did it. But yes, you see, exactly. Indra is the Lord of the senses. So that Indra comes and sees the drama going on from his observational post in heaven and says, I need to teach this Brahmin a little bit of a lesson. He comes down and sees what a beautiful garden was planted. Who planted this? I myself did it. So I didn't kill a cow, but I myself planted this garden. With what hands? These hands. Oh, you see. So when it comes to the crime of killing a cow, that was all my fault. When it came to planting your garden, that was all your merit. What a funny thing. We tend to do that. So we have to shift our understanding a little bit. The eye of discrimination will perceive all of these whirlpools of energy that come ultimately from the cosmic mind as cosmic energy, not only cosmic mind, but cosmic energy. And cosmic energy, there's no real boundary between these things. They are like whirlpools. This is beautifully described, you see, by Swami Vivekananda in Raja Yoga when he describes what is prana. Then he goes on. What is called thought is psychic prana. It's energy. This energy is being delivered, as it were. Not delivered because we tune into it. Not actually delivered by DHL or anything like that, but freely available everywhere. And we tune in. And this really is God's grace coming to us. Then in your first question, you see, how do you know this thought is in any way inspired? I think that's your question. Or I inserted it myself. Well, anything that is noble, anything that has a higher value will naturally come from the source of higher values. Anything that is degrading will have to come from either a lack of direction from myself, or myself meaning psychophysical self, what I normally call I, not understanding that the real I has no mortality within it. See, my thought was like that today. So recognizing that, then I retain an I for passport purposes only. What is your name? Swami Purnananda. What do you look like? Well, bearded and glasses. What are your interests? I like to stand on my head. All of those kinds of things I register for passport purposes. Knowing that, that is an identity for operational purposes, a kriya. So there is not only time and space, but also function has to be there. Not only name and form, but function has to be there. For functional purposes, we retain that identity. But through discrimination gradually put by scriptural inputs, by lives of holy people, by what they say, by an analysis of the world per se, we come to this conclusion: I am neither born nor do I die. I am that entity. And when the world is connected with it, I call this observer. When the world is not connected with it, I can't call it observer. There's nothing to observe. I only call that the free area, which is there, described in various ways, cosmically as Brahman, or transcendentally as Brahman, cosmically as Saguna Brahman, and as cosmic mind, God, personal God. Personal, we can call that Jesus, we call that Christ or Buddha or Ramakrishna, or any of these terms. And from there, this world is dispensed. Now, we don't normally value it like this. Spiritual life is training the mind to value it in this way, analyzing everything that occurs within our field of experience and bringing it to a position of truth. What is the truth about this world? The truth about this world is that which remains when you take time and space away. The mind is like a fragmenting thing. And what we see in front is only God, seemingly fragmented. What is the fragmenting element of it? The mind. When we use that faculty and say, I see the fragments, but I'm going to revalue it. I'm now going to register these fragments as God. And I'm going to take time and space away. I'm going to do that in meditation. And I'm then going to reintroduce them in a planned and beautiful way that is a kind of internally guided meditation, along with a suitable script, along with the suitable images, suitable concepts, and feeling. When I put the feeling in, it becomes meditation. I leave the feeling out, it's just a series of pictures. Supposing you sit in a movie and your mind is distracted and you see a series of pictures going by in continuum, looks like one thing, but you're thinking of your grocery shopping. Then you won't register what's happening, what's going on. But when you start feeling, when you see in the movie that there's a plot and that there's a story and that people's lives are being affected. Let us say there's a series on the Irish famine, and you see all the distress of people coming into the cities, all in rags and half skeletons, and see all of that, then your heart gets moved. The emotions match what you're seeing. Now, supposing we are able to use that Supposing we are able to create a series of scenes and pull the feeling in, then this is a kind of guided meditation that culminates in a reality. And in this reality, it becomes an area of potentiality. And this potentiality we can stabilize. Standing in this potential area, simply being aware, is technically called yoga nidra. And we stand instead of a dreamless sleep where we have no idea what's happening, completely unconscious of it, only conscious of it in the aftermath. We become conscious of it. And when we become conscious of it, we are close to the truth. And then it flashes, I am that. So this is the process. Now, what became of the other phases? Well, there was a potential area. Then there was a manifesting area where cosmic mind operated. And then there was the area that I wake up to and operate within. And in order to get to the creative moment, in order to get to the area of potentiality, I have to use this conscious area to revalue everything. And this revaluation is called viveka, discernment. I have to use the discernment. And when I understand the ephemeral nature of things, then that automatically makes me leave off the world, not see it as important. St. Paul tells us like that. He says, when I was a child, I did things like a child. See, when you were a child, you ran through the mud. When you were a child, you did things like a child. But now you don't do them. It's not because you had to renounce them, but you outgrew them. So we have to outgrow these things on the basis of a reevaluation of the importance and significance of this world. We have to upgrade our interests from survival and survival including all the basic needs. You can find them in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But he puts as the supreme thing, the spiritual need. We can upgrade all of these things to a condition of culture where we appreciate the world for a more prolific and deeper beauty, an appreciation of music, appreciation of art, appreciation of science. We can be active analyzers and thinkers. We can be recipients of the beauty of art and culture and also the manufacture of that. And then that leads now to a refinement of the mind. The human is capable of doing that. And when the human being refines that, makes that much more sophisticated, it yields to a revelation. Normally the revelation would be gradual, like uncovering a statue. You uncover the arm and the hand, and then the leg, and then some other part, and then the head, and then the whole thing. Or like sitting in a room with a tin roof and a small hole in the top, and you can see a beam of sunlight reflected on the floor, just a small circle. And then you make the hole a bit bigger and the circle enlarges. And you continue, you take the whole roof off eventually. And the whole room is flooded with sunlight and sunshine. So we do this in a conscious way with the mind, and we do it in a reasonable way. We do it in a progressive way. We do it in a joyful way. We do it in a sporting way, because when you come to a critical question, why is this here at all? Is it some kind of cruel joke on me? Or is it some kind of sport of waves? And even those waves that I look to be negative are waves nonetheless, and they're subject to the impermanent rule. They come, they go, they appear, they disappear. So the example for that is, supposing you're sitting there in your room listening, and all of a sudden an elephant appears. And then all of a sudden an elephant disappears. You'll rub your eyes, you'll hardly believe it. Supposing an elephant is there anyway, and it transforms itself into a mouse. That change, you'll still rub your eyes. Dramatic, over-dramatized examples, but the world is like that. We never noticed the fact that it was continuously changing. It looks like one thing. We are not aware of the speed at which we are traveling right now. You can look it up and see how fast we are traveling overall. And in doing that, you have to calculate how fast is the Earth spinning. And then how fast is that Earth traveling around the solar system? And then how fast is that solar system spinning around some 200 million years to get to a circuit? And how fast the galaxy itself is spinning? And how fast a cluster of galaxies are spinning? And how fast the whole universe is expanding? When you add all these up together, you'll have no idea the speed at which you're traveling. It doesn't look like that. It looks like something else. So what we see, what we experience, what we touch, what we taste, all through the senses, are all genetically designed to pick up scenes for us to operate our role in a small drama. Once you accept that, you play the role very well. You learn that philosophy, that art of doing it. When we look overall at the most general examples, energy comes to one thing. Yogis call this prana. When you look at matter, it comes to one thing. Yogis call this akasha. Now, akasha is also called the unmanifest, avyakta, because you hardly notice it. It is a field in which many, many potential wave systems are there, and you can catch different frequencies. When we catch one frequency, we get photons. We're able to see each other. And those photons travel, according to modern science, at a vast speed. You can't exceed that. So you are limited by a speed limit in terms of seeing things. 186,000 miles per second speed of light, you can't go beyond it. And then is that a kind of energy? Yes. Is it contained within a field? Yes. And ultimately, can all that material thing be transmuted into energy? Yes. What kind of energy? It has to be potential energy. And when you look at that potential energy, it's called prana. Everything is only prana. And thought itself is prana. We just make a distinction. A kind of refined energy, which you call psychic prana. This is the coined term that Swami Vivekananda uses. He has a whole chapter on psychic prana. Now, tapping into that psychic prana, using it well, using it in a mature way, in a sophisticated way, it becomes several things. First of all, it becomes like a laser beam when we use it as attention and beam it deliberately in different ways. And when we focus it, as it were, on one subject, it yields its secrets to us. This is called concentration. So concentration is the prerequisite for meditation, because concentration means we project a series of thoughts on one subject, and we continuously bombard it, as it were, until it yields its secrets and comes back to a kind of singularity. And when that single thought is there, we call this meditation. And when the single thought itself spontaneously yields to a reality that collectively we call power. We can call it power, we can call it knowledge, we can call it bliss. We call it Sat Chit Ananda, corresponding to each one of these. When that is self-evident. So somebody asked me some time ago, how will I know when that happens? Then I said, have you been to New York? Yes, I used to live in New York. How did you know when you were there? So it's a self-evident thing. So my understanding is that how do we know that a thought is not our own introduction. I think we answered that question. And then there is a rule, though. You see, a thought that first arrives, given that it has a higher value, that we shouldn't doubt or question. We can cancel it out with a doubt. And any thought that arrives will continue, since the thinker itself, you see, what you call observer is also thinker and knower. That the thinker itself is infallible, therefore the thought will penetrate everywhere infallibly, unless suitably neutralized by some doubt or some counter thought. So we can take advantage of that, take a thought and put a series. Like kicking a ball up, when it comes down, we kick it up again. In this way, it's like a radio transmission. We find its range. When we see the limit, we put another range in, put another range in, put another range in. It will see itself to the end. What are the noblest of thoughts? Nobler thoughts will be taking into account the unity of existence. So don't ask, may I be happy? May everybody be happy. Don't ask, may I have food? May everybody have food. May I be at peace? Let everybody be at peace. When we see all these individualities, this dividedness, we take it for granted that these are small fragments that we're incapable of seeing in terms of our totality. It would be like going up close to a pixelated picture and seeing one pixel and another pixel and another pixel and another pixel, because we can't see the totality. When we move away, we see the totality. When we withdraw, we see a totality. But first, what happens? We have to see the possibility of a totality. That's the first lesson. Understanding its nature, that it is a changing thing, and understanding that it is an appearance and disappearance. Try to find out what is the totality, what is the limitation and the totality beyond it. See, there is that story of the blind people investigating an elephant. And we think that they've come to totality when somebody, a sighted person, says, no, it's not a trunk alone. It's not like a hose pipe. It's not like a plantain leaf. It's not like a big sword. It's not, you were looking at the tusk and you were looking at different parts because you are blind. So our blindness is also there. Now, when a sighted person sees the whole elephant, they're actually seeing two things. Because even the elephant is defined within a spatial area. And what is the space beyond it? So we have to try to look at the space beyond it. When yoga and Sankhya, when yoga philosophy, based on Sankhya principles, goes one step further and declares as an Ishvara, it's defining Ishvara in a unique way, not in the way of the Bhakti Yoga. The Bhakti Yogi will have a devotional aspect, a personalized aspect, but the yogi in yoga philosophy will declare that Ishvara is the ancient teacher. Because when I know something, the inference is already there. There's more to know, more to know, more to know. And when you come across an entity that is all-knowing, then the limitation stops. So the proof or evidence for a God like that is because our range of knowledge is so limited, it infers further knowledge, further knowledge, further knowledge. We use it also in science. Science, skio, to know. Science is the willingness and the investigative capacity to know more. Inferring we don't know it all. There's always something more to know. That very fact leads us to a supreme knower. And so the yoga philosophy arrives at the conclusion of an Ishvara on that basis. And the observer, his job is to observe. So we have to convince ourselves, this is a use of philosophy, and this is a use of looking at this life in detail. That's how we start. We don't start, I'm here, where's God? We start, I'm here, what is that? And what is this life? Let us try to analyze it properly. In this way, we need this process that is emphasized by Jnana Yoga. That's why Swami Vivekananda invokes all the 4 yogas, not just one. Understanding that each one will have a different starting point. But the starting point is just that. The starting point, and eventually will involve all of the practices, because the mind has different faculties. So when you embrace the whole faculty of the mind, of knowing and feeling, and also of willing and doing and meditating also, these are the 4 approaches that are given to us. Swami Vivekananda says, you see, one or more, or all of these, but actually he means all of these, and be free. Otherwise, he wouldn't design a logo like that, you see. What is the logo? And you can see how beautiful it has, different levels and layers. Or the sun obviously is knowledge. That is required. The jiva is the Paramatman, going through the waters of karma, action, activity. And these are waves. Isn't that significant? What is this life? Waves. And then the beautiful lotus flower comes up, indicating the beauty of bhakti yoga. And then you'll find the cobra there, representing the coiled up energy that is released and unfolded in meditation. So all of these are employed. What Aurobindo called integrated yoga, integral yoga. So not a new idea. Swami Vivekananda had it. But it wasn't Swami Vivekananda's idea either. He got it from Ramakrishna, with a living example of it. And we have to go back. We've just concluded a study on the Bhagavad-Gita. Bhagavad-Gita tells us very clearly that these 4, particularly in the last chapter, all these 4 have to be employed. So we use all of this. And in order to do that, we have to use thoughts, penetrating capacity to reveal the truth. You take it as a laser that we call attention, that we can allow to alight on anything, like a spotlight. And in the using it, whatever we focus it on will be revealed to us. A wonderful process, an energetic process, and we should be extremely motivated and enthusiastic about it, because it's a wonderful sport to play. How else will they explain it except by sport? Why is it like that? No one can say. Swami Vivekananda says, at least the Hindus are honest about it and say, we don't know. And nobody knows. But play the game anyhow.
Ram Swamiji. So this is a question, since you just concluded the Bhagavad-Gita, and in the 66th stanza, it said that Sarva Dharman Parityaja, so give up all duties. So it seemed to me like Krishna tried to explain to Arjun what is the duty, what is the rightful duty, and he tried to explain it for 18 chapters. And at the end, he said, okay, give up all the duties and just listen to me. So that's how it sounds to me, but I know that it's wrong. So I was just wondering if you can elaborate.
Yes, I think I would have done it also in commentating on that particular stanza, Sarva Dharman Parityaja. So having abandoned all the duties, we are not so far in a position to abandon all the duties, because it doesn't just say that. It says, take refuge in me alone. When we have taken refuge in the Lord alone, the duties fall off by themselves. Until that point is reached, we have to function. Now, duties means attachment to the duties is what it means. Give up attachment to the duties. At the moment, all of us seem to be attached to careers and everyday life, and we seem to have to need to achieve something in it, driven by that. Some people might get up in the morning. Some people might get up in the morning. But some people might get up in the morning and be concerned. What should I do? Where should I go? What is on my agenda this morning? And then by the time they come to brush their teeth, they're in a state of acute anxiety. So this is an attachment to this aspect of doing something to get something that we have to give up. A question asked to me in the correspondence, brief correspondence. The person just sent me a text. So I'm under great stress. How can I deal with stress? Wanting me to reply in one sentence. So thinking, what will I reply in one sentence? I said, give up all concerns with the past and give up all concerns with the future and find God here and now, because God is here, God is now, God is love. And I'm borrowing that from Joe Goldsmith's text on meditation, art of meditation. Beautiful, beautiful statement. So if you're taking refuge in that entity alone, that means no sense of time is there, no anxiety about the past, no anxiety about the future. All of that is nicely dropped. And then you see, once you do that, you get liberation, freedom from all of these things, freedom from the necessity to act. Like practicing at a musical instrument. See, a musical instrument, you don't necessarily have the duty to play it. Once you know and understand how to play it, you can play it freely, no problem. But when you're learning it, you'll have the duty, as it were, to sit there every day and laboriously practice, correct mistakes, time and again, practice for hours and hours on end until you become proficient in it. All of this is within a context of Krishna's supreme teaching. That is to fix the mind. See, Manmana Bhava Mad Bhakto, fix the mind on me, be devoted to me. See, like that. Take all your energy and steer it to me. That's the prerequisite for it. So you can, if you take that stand, you have to take the preceding stanza to put it in a context. See, when the ego is dropped off like a ripe fruit, is Ramakrishna's example. When it just drops off like a ripe fruit, just falls. When that happens, then all duties, that is, all ego-associated duties are all gone. It doesn't mean to say you become inactive. On the contrary, your activity now becomes community-orientated, socially orientated. You then become a useful open channel for divine grace for everyone, everywhere. But I have to do something, that's gone. Okay, very good. So we leave it off there. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.